Northern Minnesota in late June looks like it could hold a secret and keep it forever. The long roads cut straight through dense forests of pine and birch, and the lakes glittered like dark mirrors at dusk. In these small towns, everything drifts into a deep silence by midnight. People lock their doors, not because they fear the world's violence, but because it's quiet enough to let old stories breathe, to let forgotten memories stir in the shadows. No one in Brainerd really noticed the man at first. He didn't stand out. He was in his mid-50s, with weathered hands that told a story of hard work, and drove a truck with a faded sticker from some fishing lodge peeling off the bumper. We worked the night shift at a local maintenance yard, kept to himself, and would offer a polite, quiet nod when kids on bikes waved as they passed. He had a name on the company payroll and a name on his mailbox, and both were ordinary enough that they never sparked any curiosity. But inside his small, unassuming house, there were photographs. They weren't glamorous portraits or posed family pictures. They were small captured moments. A girl with a slightly crooked tooth, her cheeks puffed out as she blows bubbles in a sunny backyard. A tiny perfect hand gripping a father's thumb with surprising strength. A birthday cake with a single flickering candle. The pictures were arranged neatly on a shelf above a workbench, and each one had a small scrap of paper pinned just beneath it with a date. One of the papers had a name written on it, Claire, but a later one, tucked behind the others, was cut short and had turned yellow with age. Its edges singed, as if a memory had been scalded by fire. If anyone ever asked about the photos, he told them the same story with the same dry, matter-of-fact honesty. His daughter had died 10 years ago. An accident, they said. It was a cold winter road, icy and dark, and a truck that just didn't stop. He'd explained that the police did everything they could, that the entire town showed up for the funeral. But he never talked about how the silence settled into him after that, like fine silt at the bottom of a still lake, burying everything. He never mentioned how every young woman he passed on the street looked, just for a fleeting second, like the precious hand that had slipped away from his own. Melissa Turner was 18 years old on a long, warm Saturday in June. Her hair was bleached in streaks from long afternoons spent by the lake, and she had a laugh that started deep in her chest and bubbled up, infectious and full of life. She had plans, big plans, community college in the fall, a steady job at the local diner, and a brand new pair of work boots she kept on the back porch, waiting to be broken in. That night, she walked home from her shift the same way she always did, down County Road 12. Headphones on, listening to her favorite playlist as the sky melted from a brilliant orange into a deep, velvety blue. The man watched that same road. He had been watching it for weeks, learning the rhythm and timing of the town when the mail truck made its rounds. When the teenagers spilled out of the diner after their shifts, and when Melissa's familiar silhouette would appear under the canopy of maple trees, he told himself he wasn't hunting. He repeated it like a mantra. He told himself he only wanted to borrow a name, a night, just a small piece of time that belonged to someone else. He would bring her somewhere safe, he reasoned with himself. He would just sit with the memory of his own daughter, and this living, breathing girl would remind him what it felt like to hold a hand, to protect someone. It was a twisted logic that only profound grief could invent, a strange reversal. Private, desperate ritual meant to fill an absence that had become a black hole in his life. That Saturday evening, Lissa's last text message was simple: be home in 10. Her mother's reply went unanswered. Townspeople later said they saw her walking the way a young person walks when they know the road by heart without a care in the world. A neighbor swore he saw a truck's headlights slow down behind her, linger for a moment, and then speed away into the darkness. The security footage from the diner showed the little bell on the door jingling as Melissa pushed it open and left at exactly 10:22 p.m. After that, nothing, just a blank, an empty space where she should have been. The next morning, they found her backpack. It was lying 2 streets over, discarded by a bench beneath the highway overpass. Inside, her life was scattered. A cracked tube of lip balm, a half-folded receipt from the grocery store, a paperback book with a dog-eared corner marking her page. There was no sign of a struggle, no blood, no witnesses who could say they saw the moment she vanished. The surveillance cameras that might have captured the truck's license plate had mysteriously failed overnight. Coincidence, the officer said, as he wrote it down in his notebook. That night, the man came home and sat in his kitchen under the dim, flickering bulb. He brought out an old cassette player and one of the tapes he always kept with him. Recordings of laughter, the soft, shuffling sound of a child learning to walk. He rewound the tape until the voice, soft, small, and so familiar, came back. He listened to it over and over, as if it were a map that could lead him back to a place he'd lost. Outside, the world continued on as normal. A dog barked in the distance. A car passed on the street, and a late-night radio host called out the weather forecast. Inside, he wrote on a new scrap of paper and pinned it beneath a new photograph he'd taken. He wrote a name, Melissa Turner. June 24th, 20X. When the news of Melissa's disappearance hit the small town, the absence she left felt enormous, completely out of proportion. Not because she was famous or special in some grand way, but because she was ordinary. The kind of ordinary that people imagine as safe. The kind of ordinary that can't just be stolen from the world. News vans rolled into town, their satellite dishes pointing at the sky. Officers knocked on every door, their questions hanging in the air. Her friends retraced the route that had somehow folded her into the night. The community organized a search party, posted flyers with her smiling face on every lamppost, and lit candles by the lake, their small flames flickering like prayers in the dark. At the maintenance yard, the man's coworkers started to mutter. They talked about his long shifts, his strange habit of leaving early for no reason. A few of them noticed him washing his truck late at night, scrubbing the metal with a frantic motion as if he was trying to erase something sticky and stubborn.
Ow.
But grief is a master of disguise.
No.
It can hide in careful habits, in a quiet demeanor, in a polite refusal to let anyone get too close. By now, the town had its first theory and its first enemy, a stranger hiding in a familiar face. The detectives would soon come asking about his past. His neighbors would start to piece together the late-night trips and odd deliveries. But none of those practical, logical things could ever answer the real question: why a man so deeply shaped by loss would choose to take a life into his hands this way. To himself, he believed he was giving names back to a silence that had consumed him. But to the world, he had taken Melissa, and on the kitchen shelf, beneath the new photograph, a fresh scrap of paper fluttered in the draft, the ink still drying. Melissa Turner taken at dusk. The search for Melissa Turner was now in its second week. Hope, once a bright flame that fueled the town's volunteer efforts, had started to flicker. Volunteers still trudged through the dense woods, their bright orange vests a stark contrast to the deepening green of summer. Drones, like mechanical dragonflies, hummed over the still surfaces of nearby lakes, their cameras searching for any sign, any clue. Flyers with Melissa's smiling face, a picture from last year's prom, were plastered everywhere, on gas station windows, community bulletin boards, and telephone poles. They flapped in the humid breeze, a constant, silent reminder of the girl who was gone. But after 10 days of fruitless searching, a grim reality began to settle over the community. The initial urgency was giving way to a dull, aching routine. People went back to their jobs, conversations turned to other things, and the search parties dwindled. The town's optimism, once so resilient, was fading. The case was turning cold, another name on a long list of unanswered questions. That is, until Tuesday, until another girl disappeared. Her name was Lucy Henderson. Like Melissa, she was 18, on the cusp of starting her adult life. She vanished on a sunny Tuesday afternoon, walking home from her summer job at the local hardware store. The two girls lived less than 5 miles apart, a detail that would later prove crucial. But at first it felt like a random, cruel coincidence. Lucy was reliable, always texting her mom when she was on her way home. But that day, the text stopped. Her phone sent its last signal at 5:42 p.m. Her final message was to a friend, a simple, casual text that would become haunting in retrospect. Taking the shortcut through the woods. Home soon. That shortcut was a well-trodden path, a quicker route that many locals used. It snaked right behind the town's old maintenance yard, a place filled with rusting equipment and overgrown weeds. It was the same yard where a quiet, unassuming man worked the night shift. At first, investigators didn't connect the two cases. Melissa had disappeared on a Friday night after a party. Lucy vanished on a Tuesday afternoon walking home from work. Different days, different circumstances, different parts of town. It seemed like two separate tragedies striking one small community. But then, a discovery shifted everything. Lucy's bike was found. It wasn't crashed or hidden. It was just leaning casually against a chain-link fence bordering the maintenance yard. The patrolman who found it, a young officer named Miller, felt a jolt of recognition. He'd been at the Turner house just a week earlier, listening to Melissa's mother describe every detail of her daughter's life, searching for anything that might help. And one detail stuck with him. Melissa's mother had mentioned a specific sticker on a pickup truck. Melissa had pointed out once a faded decal from a fishing lodge up north. As Officer Miller looked around the maintenance yard, he saw it. Parked in its designated spot was an old, beat-up pickup truck. And on the rear bumper, peeling at the edges, was that same fishing lodge decal. The truck belonged to a man named Walter Graves. Walter was in his late 50s, a maintenance worker who mostly kept to himself. When detectives brought him in for questioning, he was the picture of calm cooperation. He explained that on the day Lucy disappeared, he'd been homesick. He even had proof. His supervisor confirmed it, and his time card showed he had clocked out early that afternoon. There was no reason to doubt him. Police did their due diligence. He searched his small house, his shed out back, his truck, and his basement workshop. They found nothing. There's no sign of a struggle, no suspicious items, nothing that screamed criminal. What they found was the home of a quiet, aging man. A man who, they learned, grieved openly for his own daughter, who had tragically passed away in an accident 10 years prior. His neighbors described him as polite, if a bit reclusive. He seemed harmless, a man burdened by his own past, not a predator. The investigation was hitting another dead end. But one detective, Sergeant Hall, couldn't shake a feeling. He was a veteran, a man who trusted his gut more than anything. Something about Walter's basement workshop bothered him. It wasn't what was there, but what seemed out of place. On a shelf, neatly arranged, was a row of framed photographs. They were all scenic shots of lakes, the kind you might find in a calendar. But under each photo there was a small, handwritten label. Hall leaned in closer. One read Lake Emily, 0624. The date Melissa Turner disappeared. He moved to the next one. Lake 0702. The date Lucy Henderson vanished. The dates matched perfectly. They weren't just photos of lakes, they were trophies. Souvenirs of his crimes, hidden in plain sight. Hall knew, with a certainty that chilled him to the bone, that he was looking at the killer's private collection. That same night, Sergeant Hall returned to Walter's house, this time with a warrant and a full team. There was no dramatic standoff. Walter met them at the door, his face etched with a weary resignation. He wasn't armed, wasn't angry. He just looked tired. "I know why you're here," he said, his voice low and steady. "But you're too early." His words hung in the air, a cryptic and terrifying confession. What did he mean, too early? The team descended into the basement, their flashlights cutting through the dusty air. And there, above the workbench where Walter built his birdhouses, was the answer. Pinned to the wall was a single, freshly developed Polaroid photo. It was Lucy Henderson. She was sitting in the passenger seat of Walter's truck, holding a thermos. She wasn't crying or struggling. There were no bruises, no visible signs of fear. She was just looking at the camera with an expression of mild confusion, maybe a little uncertainty. It was the look of a girl who had accepted a ride from a seemingly kind older man offering her a warm drink on her walk home. Hall carefully took the photo down. On the back, written in the same looping, neat handwriting as the labels on the lake photos, were the words, "Lucy Henderson." She reminded me of her laugh. Walter wasn't a monster of rage. He was a monster of grief, a man so broken by his own loss that he had started collecting echoes of the daughter he could never get back. He wasn't kidnapping them to harm them in a violent way, but to spend a fleeting moment with a ghost, recreating a memory before burying it forever by the water. For Walter, these girls weren't victims in the traditional sense. They were temporary replacements for his lost daughter. And for the families of Melissa and Lucy and the town that searched for them, that truth was perhaps the most horrifying discovery of all. By the middle of July, the small town of Brainerd wasn't just a quiet on the map anymore. It was a headline. 2 girls had gone missing. 2 ordinary lives. Melissa Turner and Lucy Henderson had simply vanished. The town changed overnight. Reporters began to fill the booths at the local diner. their microphones and notepads replacing coffee mugs. Volunteers fanned out across the neighborhoods, their faces grim as they taped flyers to mailboxes and light poles. A forgotten fear returned, and parents started waiting outside school gates again, watching their kids until they were safely inside their cars. The air in Brainerd felt heavier, more oppressive than the humid summer heat itself. Detective Hall was running on fumes. Sleep was a luxury he couldn't afford. His office was a chaotic landscape of case files, maps, and half-empty coffee cups. He spent his nights going over every call log, every snippet of security camera footage, every single mile of road between where Melissa and Lucy were last seen. He traced their routes again and again, and one detail kept pulling at him. Both roads, the one Melissa walked and the one Lucy biked, passed the same insignificant turnoff, a small, unassuming gravel lane. It led toward an old maintenance yard, a sprawling lot of rusting equipment and overgrown weeds, owned by a man named Walter Graves. It wasn't proof, not even close. It was just proximity. But proximity in a town as small and tightly knit as Brainerd meant something. It was a thread, and Hall had to pull it. Walter Graves had lived on that property for decades. He was one of those figures everyone knew, but nobody really knew. An older man, quiet, kept to himself. When you saw him in town, he'd offer a polite nod, a faint sad smile. He was always working, always tinkering with something in his yard. The town had its stories about Walter. People said he'd lost his own daughter years ago in a tragic car accident up near Duluth. They said he never truly recovered from it, that a part of him had died with her. Some folks who'd spoken to him over the years mentioned how his voice would turn soft and distant whenever he spoke about her. Like he was talking to someone who was still right there in the room with him, just out of sight. A ghost in his own life. Then, one evening in late July, it happened again. The fear that had been simmering in Brainerd boiled over. Another young woman disappeared. Her name was Kate Summers. She was 18 years old, a bright high school senior just waiting on her college acceptance letters to arrive. She worked part-time at the diner, and she was last seen leaving after her shift, waving goodbye to a coworker as she walked toward the main road. It was the exact same route Melissa Turner had taken just weeks earlier. The investigation scrambled. Security footage from a downtown store caught Kate's faint reflection in the window at 10:11 p.m. She was just a silhouette against the streetlights. And then, moments later, the same pair of headlights that had appeared in the footage from Melissa S.'s disappearance glided past the frame. A ghost vehicle. Investigators tried everything to identify it, but the license plate was unreadable. The image blurred and distorted by the rain that had started to fall that night. The lead turned into another dead end. Detective Hall and his partner went back to Walter Graves' property. When they questioned him again, he was just as cooperative as the first time. He invited them in, offered them a glass of water, told them he'd been home all night, reading old journals. His tone was calm, his words measured and careful. There was no anger in his voice, no defensiveness, not even any fear. He just seemed tired, exhausted, in a way that had nothing to do with a lack of sleep. They asked to look around his workshop, and he agreed without hesitation. The place was meticulously organized. Tools hung in perfect rows, and jars of screws and nails were neatly labeled. But as Detective Hall scanned the room, his eyes landed on something strange on the wall. It was a row of small, framed photographs. They were simple landscape shots. Serene lakes at sunset, empty forest roads winding through pine trees. Each photo had a small, handwritten label on the matting underneath. Lake Emily 0624. Gull Lake 0702. Pelican Point 0718. A cold feeling began to creep up Hall's spine. He knew those dates. He knew them intimately. They were the nights the girls went missing. He tried to keep his voice steady as he pointed to the pictures and asked Walter what they meant. Walter looked over, and a faint, sad smile touched his lips. "They're places I go to remember her," he said, his voice becoming soft, distant. "My daughter, each one was her favorite spot. I try to visit on the same day, every year, to feel close to her." The explanation was plausible, almost touching. But the detective said nothing. Something inside him tightened into a hard, cold knot. Because in the corner of Walter's workbench, half hidden under a stack of invoices and old papers, he noticed 3 Polaroid pictures. They weren't landscapes, they were portraits. 3 girls, smiling, sitting in the passenger seat of a truck. The background blurred. Melissa, Lucy, Kate, and below each photo in the same neat handwriting was a short note. Under Melissa's photo, it said, "Reminded me of her eyes." Under Lucy's, "Reminded me of her laugh." And under Kate's, the last one, it said, "Reminded me of her silence." Walter saw the detective looking at them. His expression didn't change. He just whispered, his voice barely audible. "I just take pictures of places. Sometimes people remind me of her. It's all I ever wanted." "I just remember." The air in the workshop was thick and silent. The detective didn't reply. He couldn't find the words. He just carefully, deliberately, folded the 3 Polaroids into an evidence bag, the plastic crinkling in the stillness. He turned and walked out of the workshop, out into the heavy, windless night. Behind him, through the open window, he could see Walter sit down at his desk. He watched as the old man picked up a pen and wrote something in his notebook. Another name, another date. Then he closed the book softly, gently, as if he were sealing away a memory too fragile and precious to ever survive the light of day. Detective Hall returned the next morning, warrant in hand. Rain rolled over the rooftops of Brainerd as gray clouds pressed low against the trees. Walter's house sat quiet at the end of a dirt road, curtains drawn, chimney still, the kind of silence that felt almost deliberate. Inside, everything was tidy. Too tidy. The kitchen counters were spotless, the floors swept clean. Hall moved slowly through the narrow hall, his flashlight brushing across framed pictures of lakes, children, and weathered faces that weren't easily recognized, and none of them showed Walter's daughter, not one. When Hall opened the door to the basement, the smell of oil and cedar hit him first. Wooden shelves lined the walls, filled with jars of nails, fishing lures, and old tools. On the workbench sat a small wooden box with a single photograph resting on top. It was the same kind of Polaroid as before, the same faint smile, the same truck window reflection. Walter followed the detective downstairs, hands in his pockets. "I used to fix radios down here," he said quietly. "My girl liked the static, said it sounded like rain." Hall nodded, scanning the shelves. He noticed 3 small candles on a tray near the far wall. Each candle had a name scratched into the wax with a pocket knife. Melissa, Lucy, Kate. All burned halfway down, their wicks still black from smoke. "What are these for, Walter?" Hall asked. "For remembering," Walter said. "So I don't forget the faces I've seen. So I don't forget hers." He looked toward the far corner, where a folded blanket lay across an old chair. Above it, the wall was covered in taped notes maps, sketches, and sentences written in shaky handwriting. Lake Emily, clear water. Route 12, quiet after dark. They look like her. Walter rubbed his hands together, his voice low but steady. "You think I wanted this?" he said. "You think I go looking for them? I don't. They just appear walking where she used to walk, smiling the way she used to smile. And every time I see one, I think maybe that's my chance to remember right this time. Maybe if I can just hold on to that moment, she'll stop fading." Hall looked at him for a long time. "What happened to your daughter, Walter?" Walter didn't move. She was 16. The truck skidded off the road right into the lake. They said they pulled her out, but I never saw her face. You can't bury a memory if you're not sure it's gone. Hall stood quietly in the hum of the basement, the air thick and still. Then he noticed something else, a faint ticking sound. Behind a cabinet, an old radio crackled to life, unprompted. Static filled the room, sharp and uneven. And under that static, a small voice, maybe from a tape, maybe from a dream, whispered a single word. "Dad." Walter closed his eyes. "It plays that sometimes," he murmured. "I think it's just the frequency catching an old station." But Hall wasn't sure. That night, he filed his report, but left one detail out. He didn't mention the voice. He didn't mention that as he left the basement. The radio light flickered twice, once dimes. If someone was still tuning in from far, far away, this story explores the depths of grief and how it can blur the lines between memory, reality, and something else entirely. Walter isn't a monster. He's a man haunted by a ghost he can't let go of. The Polaroids aren't trophies of a crime, but desperate attempts to hold on to a fading image. Each picture of a stranger who resembles his daughter is a fragment of a memory he's trying to piece back together. The candles from Melissa, Lucy, and Kate aren't for victims, but for the faces he encountered that reminded him so strongly of his lost child. He lights them to remember not just his daughter, but the painful, fleeting moments when her memory felt almost real again. Detective Hall's investigation starts as a search for a predator, but slowly transforms into something far more complicated. He enters Walter's home expecting to find evidence of a crime, but instead finds a shrine to a memory. The tidy house isn't the sign of a meticulous criminal covering his tracks. It's the home of a man whose life has been frozen in time, kept in perfect order as if waiting for someone to return. The lack of his daughter's photos isn't because he wants to forget her. It's because he can bear to look at a static image when he's so desperately chasing the living, breathing memory of her. His mind has become a trap, replaying the moments leading to her loss and projecting her face onto innocent strangers. The basement is the heart of Walter's world. It's where he worked, where his daughter found comfort in the sound of static. And now, it's where he tries to reconnect with her. The maps and notes on the wall are not a predator's hunting grounds, but a map of his own grief. Each location marks a place where he saw a girl who looked like her, a place where the ghost of his daughter felt close. He doesn't seek to harm these girls. He seeks to capture a single moment of recognition, a second where he can almost believe she's still there. But this desperate search for connection only deepens his isolation and raises suspicion. The most chilling and heartbreaking moment is the whisper from the radio. Is it a random broadcast? A fragment of an old recording Walter made? Or something supernatural? Walter dismisses it, perhaps because he's heard it before and has learned to live with these hauntings. Or perhaps because acknowledging it as real would be too much to bear. For Hall, it's a moment that shatters the simple logic of a police investigation, introduces an element that can't be explained away, a sign that Walter's connection to his daughter might be more than just memory. In the end, Hall makes a choice that defies protocol. He omits the voice from his report. Why? Maybe it's an act of compassion. He sees Walter not as a threat, but as a man drowning in sorrow. And exposing this strange phenomenon would only bring more scrutiny and pain without offering any real answers. Or maybe Hall is unsettled, unwilling to document something that defies rational explanation. He knows the system he works for has no room for ghosts whispering through radios. The flickering light as he leaves is the final, ambiguous sign. It could be a faulty wire, or it could be a signal, a farewell, or a thank you from a spirit who was, for a moment, heard. This story leaves us with lingering questions. Is Walter's grief creating these paranormal events? Or is his daughter's spirit genuinely trying to reach him? What becomes of Walter, left alone in his quiet house with the maps of his memory and a radio that sometimes whispers his name? The silence that Detective Hall leaves behind is as profound as the static that filled the basement to space where grief, memory, and the unexplained can coexist. If you or someone you know is struggling with grief or mental health, please remember you are not alone. There are resources available, like the National Crisis and Suicide Lifeline, which you can reach by dialing 988 in the United States. 2 days after the search of that unsettling basement, the small town of Brainerd was jolted awake by the piercing wail of sirens. Police cruisers, their lights flashing in the early morning mist, formed a long, solemn line down the gravel road leading to Walter Graves's house. The reason was simple, yet ominous. Walter hadn't shown up for work. He hadn't answered a single call to his phone. In fact, no one had seen him since the night Detective Hall had left his property. Hall was the first one through the door. The house felt suspended in time, a snapshot of a life abruptly paused. A half-full coffee cup sat on the kitchen counter, its contents cold and forgotten. In the corner, a radio hummed with low static, a ghostly sound in the otherwise silent house. The air was thick with the familiar earthy smells of cedar and recent rain, a scent that now seemed to hold a new, somber meaning. On the dining table, a single, crisp envelope lay waiting. There was no name, no address, just the stark white of the paper against the dark wood. Hall picked it up. The handwriting was careful, deliberate, each letter formed with an almost painful precision. He tore it open. The words inside were not a confession in the way he expected, but something far more haunting. It read, "I never meant to take anything from the world. I only wanted to keep the moments that left too soon." Hall's breath caught in his throat as he continued. "Every time I saw her face again, it felt like a promise I'd failed to keep. I thought if I remembered enough, if I surrounded myself with the right faces, maybe she'd forgive me for letting go." The note ended with a line that sent a chill down Hall's spine. "A riddle wrapped in sorrow. There are 3 names on my shelf, but only one belongs to me." Hall immediately knew where to go. He descended the stairs into the basement, the air growing colder with each step. The scene that greeted him was different from his last visit. The candles, the ones that had cast such an eerie glow, were gone. In their place, laid out with deliberate care on the dusty floor, were 3 Polaroid photographs. They were placed side by side, their edges curling slightly, as if recoiling from the weight of time itself. He recognized the faces instantly. Melissa, Lucy, Kate, the missing girls. But something was wrong. Something had changed. He picked one up, studying it closely. The backgrounds were different now. He couldn't put his finger on it, but the lighting seemed softer, more ethereal. The faces of the girls appeared distant, almost translucent, like reflections rippling on the surface of dark water. It was as if the photos themselves were fading, just like the memories they were meant to preserve. Then he saw it. Next to the row of haunting images sat a small gray tape recorder. Hall felt a knot tighten in his stomach. With a sense of dread, he picked it up and pressed the play button. The tape hissed with static for a few seconds, a sound like a whisper from another world. And then, a voice emerged. It was Walter's, soft, calm, and utterly devoid of panic. It was a confessional, a final testament. "I see her every summer," Walter's voice explained, painting a picture of a personal recurring ghost. "By the lake. Sometimes she waves. Sometimes she just stands there, watching me. I tried to talk to her, but she never answers. Maybe that's what I deserve." Hall listened, frozen in place, as Walter's voice continued, a quiet plea. "If you find the others, tell their families they're in my thoughts. I never took them far. I only took them to where she was." And then silence. Hall clicked the stop button, the sudden quiet of the basement feeling louder than the recording itself. He replayed the last words in his head. "I only took them to where she was. It wasn't a location. There were no coordinates, no clear directions. It was just a quiet, cryptic riddle left behind by a man who had become lost in the labyrinth of his own memory. A man who had tried to build a home out of ghosts." Hall didn't know who she was, or what Lake Walter was talking about. Was she another victim? A lost love, figment of a fractured mind? The tape offered no answers, only deeper questions. Later that evening, guided by the only clues they had, the officers began to check the local lakes that had been listed under the photographs in Walter's original display. Lake Emily, Gull Lake, Pelican Point. It felt like a long shot, a search based on a ghost story. But they had nothing else. At each location, as the sun dipped below the horizon and painted the sky in shades of orange and purple, they found something. The discoveries weren't dramatic, they were small, almost symbolic tokens left behind. At the edge of Lake Emily, tangled in the reeds, was a single faded pink ribbon, the kind a young girl might wear in her hair. By Gull Lake, half buried in the sand near the waterline, lay a simple silver charm bracelet, its clasp broken. And at Pelican Point, tucked into the hollow of an old birch tree, they found a small, folded piece of paper. An officer carefully unfolded it. Inside, written in the same deliberate ink as the letter, was a single word, a word that offered both an answer and 1,000 more questions. At each of the other 2 locations, they found an identical note. Each one read the same thing. Home. The case of the missing girls was closed, but the story was far from over. Walter Graves had vanished, leaving behind a trail of sorrow and mystery. He hadn't taken the girls' lives in the way everyone had feared. Instead, he had taken them to a place he considered a final resting place, a home where they could be with her. The families had a place to grieve, but for Detective Hall, the image of Walter's quiet house, the humming radio, and the voice on the tape would linger forever. A chilling reminder that some people don't just disappear, they simply walk into their own memories and never find their way back out. A month later, the frantic energy that had gripped the small town of Brainerd began to dissolve, replaced by the quiet, steady rhythm of everyday life. The flyers, once plastered on every telephone pole and storefront window, started to fade, their colors bleached by the relentless summer sun. The search parties, which had once combed through every inch of the surrounding woods, no longer gathered at dawn. The names that had been on everyone's lips, Melissa, Lucy, Kate, slowly receded from daily conversation, absorbed into the town's heavy, collective silence. They were still missing. Just as Walter Graves, the man everyone suspected but no one could find, had simply vanished into thin air. But Detective Hall couldn't let it go. He was a man tethered to the past, and the lakes were his anchor. Every few weeks, like a pilgrimage, he would drive his worn-out sedan past the dense walls of pine trees, the scent of sap and damp earth filling his car. He'd park by the docks, the wooden planks groaning under his weight, and sit on the hood of his car, watching the light change on the water until the sky turned a deep bruised purple. He'd just sit there for hours, letting the quiet envelop him. Sometimes he brought the Polaroids with him. He'd spread them out on the warm metal of the hood, not as evidence anymore, but as reminders. They were ghosts captured on film. The faces had begun to fade over time, the ink turning a hazy amber around the edges, as if the memories themselves were aging. Melissa's bright, toothy grin, Lucy's thoughtful, serious gaze, Kate's mischievous smirk. He felt like he knew them, even though he never had. They were part of his story now, forever woven into the fabric of his career and his conscience. One evening, as the last sliver of the sun dropped behind the jagged tree line, casting long skeletal shadows across the landscape, Hall noticed something he hadn't seen before. Across the lake, half hidden in a thicket of reeds near the opposite shore, sat a truck. It looked old, forgotten, its paint so dulled by dust and weather it seemed to blend into the scenery. It had probably been there for weeks, but from his usual spot, it was just another shape in the twilight. Curiosity, a feeling he hadn't experienced with any real intensity since the case went cold, began to stir within him. He got back in his car and drove around the long, winding road that circled the lake. The air grew cooler as he approached, the sounds of the town fading away, replaced by the chirping of crickets and the gentle lapping of water against the shore. He parked a short distance away and walked closer, his footsteps muffled by the soft earth. The truck was even older, up close, rust creeping up its fenders like ivy. The driver's side door was slightly ajar, swinging silently in the faint breeze. Peered inside, his breath catching in his throat. The back seat wasn't empty, was lined with photographs, hundreds of them, spilling over the worn vinyl seats in a chaotic cascade. They were all Polaroids, just like the ones in his pocket. He picked one up. It was a picture of a young girl, maybe 10 years old, laughing as she held up a string of freshly caught fish. He picked up another, different girl, a few years older, sitting on a picnic blanket, a book open in her lap. Different faces, different summers. Each one was a stolen moment, a captured piece of a life. He realized with a jolt that every single photo had the same signature scrawled in the bottom corner, the handwriting neat and deliberate. For Claire? Who was Claire? The name wasn't connected to the case. It wasn't one of the missing girls. It was a new piece, a new mystery laid on top of the old one. He felt a chill that had nothing to do with the evening air. This wasn't just about Melissa, Lucy, and Kate. This was something bigger, something that stretched back years. Then he saw it. On the dusty dashboard, placed carefully in the center, as if on display, was a final Polaroid. This one was different. It felt heavier, more significant. It wasn't a picture of Melissa or Lucy or Kate. It was a girl he didn't recognize, standing on a dock at dusk. The water behind her was glowing with the last light of the day, a sheet of liquid gold. Her face was half turned toward the camera, her eyes calm, accepting as if she knew the picture was being taken and was at peace with it. And beside her, so faint he almost missed it, stood an older man in a flannel coat. His face was obscured by shadow, but Hall could see his hand resting gently, almost protectively on the girl's shoulder. It wasn't a threatening gesture. It was familiar, tender even. Hall's eyes dropped to the bottom of the photo. A date was written in white ink, August 14th to 10th years ago. And beneath it, one more line. Written in the same careful hand, she finally let me take one last picture. Hall stepped back from the truck, the cold air hitting him like a physical blow. He finally understood. Walter Graves hadn't been a predator in the way they all assumed. He was a collector of ghosts. Maybe his daughter Claire had been taken by the lake all those years ago. Maybe he spent his summers here, year after year, trying to recapture her image, her spirit. In the faces of other girls who reminded him of her, taking pictures, not people. He looked out at the lake. It was still silver and seemed to stretch on forever into the darkness. Somewhere in the distance, beyond the trees, a loon cried out. A single, lonely call that echoed across the water before falling silent. It was a sound of profound and infinite sadness. Hall reached into his coat pocket, his fingers finding the smooth, cool surface of the old Polaroid. He didn't take it as evidence. He folded it carefully, a secret to keep, and tucked it away. He whispered to the empty air, to the water, to the ghosts. Maybe that's all he ever wanted. The truck was towed away at dawn, its secrets hauled off to an impound lot. No one ever found Walter's body. No other trace of Melissa, Lucy, or Kate ever surfaced. They remained lost, their stories unfinished. The case was officially marked closed in the town archives, filed away in a dusty cabinet. But in a town like Brainerd, some stories never truly end. That winter, when the first heavy snow fell, blanketing the town in a pristine layer of white, the old-timers said the lake looked different. It seemed clearer, brighter, as if it were holding a light from somewhere deep underneath its frozen surface. And every June, on the anniversary of the first disappearance, a small, quiet ritual takes place. Someone leaves 3 candles burning at the edge of Gull Lake, right where the old docks meet the water. No one ever sees who does it. They just appear, their small flames flickering bravely against the wind, burning quietly until the breeze carries their light out over the dark, silent water.